Okay, so I'm sorry I'm not there. Kennedy is one of my favorite things to talk about, so I'm really sad about it. But I'll be back soon. So let's just go ahead and get started. Okay, so 1960. We're starting one of the most ridiculous decades ever. And it's going to start off with President Kennedy getting elected in 1960. It was a very famous election, not only because of Kennedy, but because it was the first televised presidential debates. So the campaign trail was televised, the debates were televised, and used to you would just hear it. You would just hear the presidents, the nominees speaking. Now you're actually going to be able to see them. This is definitely going to work out in Kennedy's behalf because, well, we all know that Kennedy is a very attractive young man, right? So on TV, Kennedy was tan, clean cut, physically fit. He actually decided to get professional advice from people who had been on camera before, like actors, and they told him to wear makeup, and he decided to do that because all the lights make you sweat, and so the makeup, holds all that in. He also got training from these actors on how to act on live camera because anything can happen when television's live. Um, so this definitely worked out in his favor, where Richard Nixon didn't do any of that. He kind of had a 5 o'clock shadow going on. He had recently been sick, so his eyes were kind of sunk in. He was starting to sweat because of the lights, so he kind of just looked kind of gross compared to Kennedy. So it was one of those things where it definitely helped Kennedy in the long run. So anybody watching the debate on TV, they said Kennedy would win the debates, whereas people who were listening to it on the radio, people said that Nixon won it because Kennedy's kind of got that really thick Boston accent. Nixon, he was very, very educated, sounded very smart. He is a very smart man. But just the television really changed everything about the 60s. And I'm going to continue to keep talking about throughout this unit how important the TV was. So just know that Kennedy, won this debate, helped him win the election because people got to see him. Okay. So here is what it would look like on the set. Again, right here, Kennedy looks real tan, real nice. Nixon right here, he's, wiping his sweat off of his brow and his mustache. This is a video. I'll let you watch it. We're not going to watch all 8 minutes of it, but let's see if I can. Let me get to it where I want to show you. Here we go. I'll show you Kennedy stop talking a little bit and then Nixon and when he starts sweating. See, there he was just wiping his sweat away. So I don't know if you guys can see it on the projector, but right here, he's starting to glisten a little bit. starting to glisten up here. So now that you have seen what it looks like, Miss Walker, if you want to replay this and let them listen to it and make them close their eyes and kind of see how different they might feel about Nixon and Kennedy based on the way that they sound. That kind of tells you, the importance of TV versus listening to the election or the debates. I'm sorry. Okay, so after all of that, Kennedy will get elected. He's the 35th president of the United States. You don't have to know this, but fun fact, he was the youngest president to get elected, and he is also the only Catholic president that we've ever had. These are the big events during his presidency that we're going to talk about. Bay of Pigs, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Civil Rights Movement, and then the Vietnam War, the very starts of it, is going to be going on during his presidency. And as you know, he was assassinated in Dallas in November 22nd of 1963. So he was really only president for 3 years. So he won't even get to finish out his 4th term. And yes, he was killed by Lee Harvey Oswald. And then Lee Harvey Oswald was killed by Jack Ruby. But we'll get to that here in just a second. Okay, Bay of Pigs. Probably one of the biggest failures that our government has ever done. And this is definitely Kennedy's biggest embarrassment, probably other than cheating on his wife like every night. So, Bay of Pigs, this happens in Cuba, which there is this little area in Cuba called Bay of Pigs. And it is literally called that because they have wild pigs in the ocean, just hanging out on the beach. So what they're going to do is the CIA is going to plan an intervention to overthrow Fidel Castro. And Fidel Castro had just overthrown the government of Cuba and made Cuba a communist country, which, remember, we don't like communism. So Kennedy was like, okay, I can send in the military, but the problem with sending in the military is that's going to look like we're invading a country, an independent country, and that could start a war. And we don't want to do that. So the CIA planned to train some of the people, like Cubans, who had gotten exiled, which means they got kicked out of the country of Cuba. Most of these people resided in like Miami. And so they're going to train these Cuban exiles, send them to Bay of Pigs, and try to overthrow and kill Fidel Castro and establish Cuba as, a free country again. Well, that doesn't go as planned. Fidel Castro knew that they were going to be there, and he pretty much shows up with his military. And while our exiles in the CIA are landing on the Bay of Pigs, Fidel Castro is like, hey, what's up, guys? And pretty much takes them all as prisoners of war. So this was a huge failure. And it's going to lead to bigger problems because Cuba is going to feel threatened by us. And who do you think they're going to call for help if they're a communist country? I hope somebody said the Soviet Union, because you're exactly right. They're going to call Big Brother, Soviet Union, and say, hey, America is threatening us. We need your help. Okay? Okay, so this isn't in your notes, but this is what I was telling you about Castro overthrowing, making Cuba communist. Okay, so because Cuba will call the Soviet Union, there's going to be so many problems here. Castro is going to allow the Soviet Union to place nuclear missiles in Cuba, okay, which Cuba is 90 miles from the coast of Florida. Okay, and this is about to run out, so 1 second. Give me 2 seconds.